Okay, please sign in.
Five members present.
Okay, Ryan, have there been any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes, Your Honor.
Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, now is the time for citizens forum. Anybody in the audience that would like to address the council on any items that is not a part of either public hearings or new business, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and I would ask a couple things. Number one, that you limit your comments to 5 minutes, and number two, that you keep it civil and respectful. If not, I will rule you out of order. If I have to do that 3 times, I will ask that you be removed from the chamber. The other thing that I would ask is that we don't have people shouting things from the audience. If you have something to say, please come up to the podium and give us your name and address. With that, go ahead.
I'm Victoria Viak, and I turned in a petition to all of you on Friday, which I hope you read, and there were a lot of online comments from the online petition also. I'm a West Des Moines resident, and I have been a business and property owner in Valley Junction for over 40 years. I'm here tonight representing many historic Valley Junction business owners, property owners, and residents. Over the last several months, a steering committee has formed that will be bringing recommendations to the City Council in the form of a master plan that will determine the future of historic Valley Junction. This committee does not fairly represent all the interest in historic Valley Junction. It only has 2 retail merchants representing the entire shopping district and has members that will financially benefit from the guidelines. The committee is making their recommendations largely based on a visual preference survey, which did not include any questions or recommendations about parking. A primary concern of mine and all the businesses that have signed my petition is the lack of requirement for new builders to provide parking. For example, recently City Council approved and allowed 3 new 3-story buildings in the 300 block of 5th Street. According to Tesca, the unbiased third party hired by the city, there will be another 116 cars in the 300 block because of the density of these new buildings. Part of this number is full-time residents. There simply is not enough room for another 116 cars in the 300 block, which means that these cars are going to spill over into the 200 block and disrupt shopping and dining for visitors, causing an immeasurable problem for current business owners. After Tesca listened to the concerns of the merchants and neighbors at the January 26th meeting, Mike noted that allowing 3-story buildings in the 100 and 200 blocks could be taken out of the guidelines. But instead, the committee took an immediate vote for allowing more 3-story buildings in the future with no guidelines for new parking. Mike from Tesca also mentioned that it is common to require builders to provide parking for new residential builds separate from public parking, but the committee hasn't designated anything in the guidelines. I'm here because I think it's important that City Council know that when the steering committee makes their recommendations, that not everyone agrees with the steering committee or is being fairly represented by them. We don't object to new ownership, change, or young people. We believe historic Valley Junction should be kept historic looking and a place to shop small. The 3 new buildings do not look like historic Valley Junction, and they are going to cause a very negative impact by creating density in Valley Junction that has never been seen before. We hope that the new guidelines are more strict and keep historic Valley Junction looking historic, but more importantly, we hope that the city holds builders to the recommendation and standards in the guidelines. Valley Junction should be designated a local historic preservation district. Please consider doing this to preserve our historic neighborhood and our business district. And I have a lot more names to add to the petition.
Okay.
I don't know who
Do you
I
want
can.
to give them to Ryan there in the purple? I think it's purple.
Maroon.
I'm really colorblind. Okay. I'm really colorblind, so I went for it. And Okay.
Thank you.
I also have a
May I?
letter from somebody that couldn't be here that's a merchant. Would it be okay for me to read her letter?
Sure, you've got about a minute left.
Okay, well, this is from Mint LA, which is a new business in Valley Junction. And she says, I'm a West Des Moines native who moved to Los Angeles after high school, graduating from Valley, to pursue a fashion degree. After nearly a decade in the fashion, I made a bold decision to move back to Iowa and try my hand as a small business owner. I met with immediate success, almost too much too fast. I quickly expanded to West Glen Town Center, where I prospered for a few years anyway. In the nearly 5 years I was at that location, I saw neighbors packing up and leaving, like the plague. What caused it? Mainly the sky-high cost of rent and the developers who ran it. It passed hands a few times to more investors that were out of state and had no connection to the town center. They were just there for profit. They ruined a very good thing. What they meant for daytime shopping is now vacant units and bars. This is what I feel like could happen in Valley Junction with the wrong developers chasing after profit. Don't get me wrong, part of the reason I'm here is for the direction of Valley Junction. But I fear that handing the key over to investors and developers that know nothing about the heart of Valley Junction is not the right move. She also says that simply there are unsolved issues with parking, rental increases, and who we are catering to as a community. Like Google, seriously? Let's really think about our core values, who built this foundation, and who we are as a community. I also want to note that I spent 3 years in the East Village, which was supposed to be trending for small retailers.
I'm sorry, Victoria, your time's expired.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you sharing with us. Councilman McKinney, like to offer something?
Yeah, Victoria, I was just going, thank you for your comments. I heard everything related to the parking, and then I heard the items related to the design guidelines. And I believe what I heard, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding it, you said that you hope the new regulations and standards that were developed by the steering committee are applied. Is that accurate?
Actually, no.
Come on back up. I'm sorry. Come on back up.
That's what I thought.
I think during that February 26th meeting, there were a lot of people there to speak, and they weren't allowed to speak until after the committee had already voted to allow more three-story buildings. And then all the people that were there all stood up and said, we don't want any more three-story buildings. So I think the steering committee is probably going to tell you that we all want it, and they've decided that's what we want, and that's not what we want.
Okay, and just in terms of the look and the feel and the aesthetics and the visual items that were part of those packets, and I know they were significant, is that something that you're saying you have concern about that portion of it?
Well, no, because
Okay.
what we're trying to say is we want the buildings to look like they fit into the neighborhood.
Okay.
And the buildings that have been built in the 300 block do not fit into the neighborhood right now.
Okay.
So I know that Tesca did a whole thing, master plan several years ago, and they said any new building would have to look historic, like it would fit into the neighborhood. And that advice was not taken.
Well, I appreciate that, and I share in the concern that you have expressed relative to that 300 block, and part of at least my perspective on this is the whole reason we actually went through this process now, because unfortunately at the time we went through the process when those prior buildings were brought before the council, we didn't have something we could point to that said you have to build to this standard. You must use this, you shall use that, you cannot use these items. It created a lot of frustration because if you don't have a standard, then you don't have a basis, and you put the city in a legal position where somebody could say, you've held me to a standard that doesn't exist, and you, the city, are liable. And so as a result of that, we went through this process, and I know we're still going through it in the sense that the recommendations are just adopted, and it will ultimately come before council. But I'm excited to look at and understand those design guidelines, which is why I'm asking these questions, because I think it's really important we do have those standards so that you all know, we know, and the development community knows exactly the standard they'll be held to. And they can't use certain materials, and they'll have to use other materials.
Well, I think the merchants could be represented more equally on the committee because there's only 2 merchants on the committee. And the merchants are the ones that have put in the time, and the reason Valley Junction got voted best shopping place last week in City View. So I feel like they need to have a voice.
I
And
appreciate
those are the ones that signed the petition.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing more names here, and I look forward to looking at it. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, anybody else who'd like to address the council? Please give us your name and address.
Yeah, Catherine Harrington, President and CEO of the West Des Moines Chamber of Commerce, and I'm at 3917 Cody Circle. So I am also part of the Commission for Historic Valley Junction, and it's really an honor to be part of this process and have a voice. I do appreciate there is a well-rounded group of folks that come from all parts of our city, from all walks of life, and I really feel like it represents our community very strongly. I love that we all have an incredible passion for Valley Junction, and we all love it. We all are there, we spend time, we enjoy the restaurants, we enjoy the shops. I mean, it's near and dear to everybody's our hearts. And it doesn't matter if you've lived there your whole life or if you're a newcomer. You love this area, right? And I've only been here for 18 years, so maybe you can call me a newcomer, but I love Valley Junction. And I know that the folks that have lived there and have history there and generations love it too. So I think the question is, we want the same things. We want beautiful growth for the area, but smart growth, right? We don't want a skyscraper. We don't want something that looks absolutely crazy and out of place. We want it to fit into the area. But I want to make sure we understand we have this commission to vote on these things, and we all came together. We voted on 3 stories is what we agreed on as a commission that we think is fair. If it was personally up to me, I would actually go higher because I see we are going to build Valley Junction for our future, for our children, our grandchildren, and their grandchildren. There was a gentleman that talked about this at the commission, and he's right. We're not thinking about Valley Junction for us. We're thinking about it for our grandchildren. And our grandchildren and their children are not going to be driving cars, believe it or not. I know it's hard to believe, but cars are going to be a thing of the past. So I know right now there's some congestion, and we all want to be there. I think we can think creatively about cars and parking. Maybe there's a parking garage we can build. We can look at this out of the box. Let's think out of the box as a city. We're all extremely smart. And I know we can think of other options that maybe we haven't thought about. I'd love to explore some sort of unique parking garage. And I see Valley Junction as, you go to these towns like Breckenridge that are still charming, but they're bustling with people, and they have their garages figured out, right? They have their transportation figured out. You go to Aspen, which is quaint and adorable and still has that charm. You go to these other towns, and that to me is what Valley Junction is. It's going to be the attraction tool for newcomers, for workforce, which we need desperately. And it's about placemaking right now. These workers that want to choose to live in West Des Moines, they'll choose West Des Moines because we have the best city in America to live, work, and play. And I love that we're all coming together. I think we should lead with our heart and think of some new options too for the parking. And I know that's a huge contingency issue. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Catherine.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Wells. I'm at 138 Fish Street. I'm a business owner in Valley Junction, also the board president, and I'm also the chair of the Master Plan Update Steering Committee. So just to reiterate some of the points that were made, parking is still a conversation we are having in some of these committee meetings. I know when we talk about zoning and future meetings, that will be addressed. And so the idea of future developments or new construction requiring parking is still on the table in those conversations. So it's not that we just overlooked that. That is still definitely on the table. As far as, 3-story buildings, part of the vote and part of the design guidelines on that was limiting where they could be. And so when we kind of did the math on that, it was, okay, really limited where we could do that in the first and second block. And so it was, yeah, we would still want to preserve our history and our character, but also too, we don't want to put limitations on our potential. And so I think that was part of the idea behind that vote. And whether it's luxury condos, and so they're bigger spaces, so not as many units, or offices, that way we can activate the lower levels too and put more retail in there and move offices up there. So that's some of the ideas that were thrown around in those meetings. As far as having public comment, we did have public forum throughout the agenda, so people were allowed to make comments throughout the entire process. And that's why we had a 4-hour meeting, so people could make their comments throughout the process before the vote was happened. And then conversation regarding the petition was brought up after the meeting to kind of have a more focused conversation on that. But public comment was allowed throughout the entire meeting on agenda items and those topics as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you for chairing the committee as well. I know there's a lot of passion around Valley Junction and what is going on down there, a lot of interest, and it's certainly not easy to chair the committee with all the passion that surrounds this great place. So come on up.
My name is Lynette Byers. I live at 1400 Locust Street in Historic Valley Junction. I'm also a business owner down there. I own Big Acai Corporation, so the Big Acai Bowl's down there. I really appreciate everything that everyone is doing. I appreciate everything that Meredith is doing. I appreciate the committee, members of the committee. Victoria, I appreciate your perspective as well, and everybody else here. My first house was in Valley Junction in 1989, 529 9th Street. We bought that house down there then. I've moved away from Valley Junction, and I continue to come back. And I've been there now for 15 years. The one thing that I want to say is I think that my business is interesting in Valley Junction. I think it brought in a lot more younger perspective than the area was used to for a while. The primary demographic that I have in my business is 16 to 22-year-old females, and we designed it that way. What happens with that is that the 16 to 22-year-old females also bring in the 16 to 22-year-old males. And not only that, but what happens with the 16 to 22-year-old females is they also bring in mom and dad, because mom and dad see the bank account every week, and they say, where in the hell are you spending all of this money at? So they come, and then they enjoy it, and then after they come, they bring grandma and grandpa. And then pretty soon, we have grandma and grandpa coming on their own and bringing in their families. The reason I mention that is that I think change is good. I really do think change is good. However, we can't do it in such a way that you disenfranchise your original target, the people who made it what it is, to bring in something new. I think that the challenge for the committee is huge. You guys, it's enormous, right? You have to define what is acceptable level of a building aesthetics on the outside that doesn't disenfranchise the people that have lived there for 50 years, yet also draws in somebody new, right? And I think integrated communities is really big on that. You have to draw in somebody else, with one group, without disenfranchising another. I hear what they're saying about the 3-story buildings. If you change it too fast, you are going to disenfranchise everything that has helped build that up. And you can't do that. You can't afford to do it. We're going to be a ghost town, like parts of East Village, like the strip mall out by Jordan Creek, where you've got these great new buildings, but you've got nobody to occupy them or come to them. And we don't want our historic district to have that happen to it. The other thing that I want to say is, as you guys think about this and you plan for these new buildings going forward, think about the businesses. People go to Valley Junction because they believe they are the small business owner. They are in the embodiment of supporting your small businesses. So when you build these new buildings and you create rents that are $25 a square foot, like you have in Waukee and Grimes, you know, those cities are really filling themselves right now, right? You've got big rents like that. Downtown, my rent is $25 a square foot in the 801 Grand Building. I can't afford to have that in Valley Junction, and I don't think customers want to come and see me if they think that's what my business is. So as much as emphasis as we're putting on new development and defining what it looks like on the outside, be thoughtful about not excluding by default the small business owner that people come there for to begin with. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Lynette. Anybody else for Citizens Forum? Come on up. Give us your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Shelley Drower, and I own the building at 325 5th Street, and I'm also the business owner there. I just wanted to run off of what she was saying, because I was looking, and, you know, people my business doesn't necessarily benefit being in Valley Junction in that you aren't just shopping and you want to come to a quilt, you know, like you have to quilt or be interested in quilting to buy quilty stuff. But I love being in Valley Junction, and that our business has been there for over 35 years. And over and over and over, people have been telling me, and I didn't bring my papers tonight, but I'll get them to you, of people signing the petition, because they're very concerned that Valley Junction is going to be turning into the East Village West. They don't want that. They don't shop the East Village anymore because the parking is a giant hassle. The shops that can afford to be down there are very, quite expensive. And anyway, they're very concerned. And when I was looking online, like the new building to the south of us, they are wanting $22 per square foot for that. So automatically, I can tell you that excludes small businesses and most restaurants in this climate, because you can't sign a 10-year triple net lease at $22 a square foot when you aren't sure what the economy is doing and what's happening and everything like that. I feel very thankful that I own my building, so I have more control over that for myself. But one of the attractions to Valley Junction is all the micro businesses and small businesses that are there because they can afford to be there, and it helps them grow to be able to afford to be there and have a storefront instead of just being around the corner or somewhere obscure. They have you can see them. I can't remember the store. It's, I can't remember the name of it, but I was walking to the bank because the bank has their temporary location, saw something in the window, went in and discovered like a whole new store and bought a bunch of stuff that was super cute, but it was strictly because I could just walk that district and see it all. And so it really concerns me. The other thing that really concerns me is parking, obviously, which I've been bringing up for like 2 years now. But it is a real problem. And I have video, like right now, I think a third of the problem is construction workers parking on Fifth Street. So we have very limited spots on the third block. A bunch of them are taken up by construction people. And you can see that like as soon as 4 o'clock hits and they're done, they're like little ants going to their cars, and then all those cars leave. But people living in the building to the north of me, which is Scott Cutler's building that has residents right now, they are parking on Fifth Street. I'm friendly to them. I let them use my front little lawn for their puppies and whatever, but they are parking on Fifth Street, and those cars stay all day. So we need the turn. It'd be like if all of us went to St. Kilda's in the morning, ordered a coffee, and sat there all day long getting no other food. They wouldn't make money. We count on the parking spaces turning so that we make money. And for me especially, my customers are carrying heavy sewing machines, and asking them to park in the public lot. Like my employees will park in the public lot, I'll park in the public lot, but to ask somebody to carry a 35, 40-pound sewing machine for a block is a problem. And I've already had 2 older ladies drop machines and cause significant damage to their machines. And I don't know, a lot of people don't realize, but our sewing machines start at like $1,500 and go up to $15,000. So dropping a $7,000 sewing machine and causing $3,000 of damage to it is a pretty big deal. And even though we communicate to them to like call us, we'll come bring it for them. They're too Iowa nice, and they don't want to bother us, even though we repeatedly, it's not a bother, it's just the way that our nature is in Iowa. So I don't really have an answer of how to solve the problem. It might help if for temporarily there could be some kind of public lot parking for them with a permit or something. But asking people to pay $800 and whatever, 99 plus, and having to walk a block to their apartments is kind of a big ask to me. But I don't mind the development. I don't mind progress. I do have a problem when it starts affecting my customers' ability to even get to me or to Pinge or to the art gallery. They only have like a few spots right in front of their shop to begin with. So anyways, and every day when I look at that building, I'm honestly very shocked that someone would put that exterior on a building and not be surprised that people would have a fit. It didn't fit in from the minute it was in the design process. So fitting in was never their intention. And I think that should be kept in mind as we go forward, because from what I understand, there's a lot of properties that have been bought by that entity. And so
Anyway.
Sorry, your time's
Guess
up,
that's
Shelley.
it.
If you could just
Yeah.
wrap up quick
Thank you,
here.
guys. Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Anybody else for Citizens Forum?
Frank Duncan, West Des Moines, 433 9th Street. Lifetime citizen. Served on the council for 10 years back in 1970. And it's not an easy job, I'm sure all of you that. I had Kevin's position as a first ward, so he knows as well. I kind of got in on the last end of the big rush that stopped the end of the highway down there. How did it start? I mean, who Evans brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission? Is that how it? What steps has it taken?
I'm sorry, how did what start?
The position of changing it.
Well, how it started was we provided 3 different economic development programs, Frank, and those economic development programs were successful, and they led to somebody tearing down a building and putting a new building up. And that was something that we didn't foresee happening. And when that new building got put up, as Councilman McKinney was referring to earlier, we realized we didn't have specific design guidelines that were real firm to determine how that building would go back up and what it would look like. And so some of the residents saw that building. They didn't like the look of that building. They asked us to take a time out, and we did. And then we set up this committee, and we, as I mentioned at the committee, we set it up to make sure that we had representatives of the 2 different neighborhood associations down there, as well as the business interests down there. And we feel that we did that. And so there's good representation on that committee. We put this process in place, and now we need to follow this process. Not that we don't appreciate the input of everybody here and everybody coming here. We understand the passion. As I said, when Victoria brought the petition last time, we don't govern, we don't rule by petition. That's just not how we run the city. As a former councilman, you realize that. And there are a lot of people that aren't here tonight that if they knew you were all coming probably would come to give the opposite opinion. And, so we've got a process in place. We're going to follow that process. We appreciate all the voices that have come out, and we certainly want to hear you, but I think it's important that we follow that process.
So in other words, I'm standing up here for no reason.
No, and as a former councilman, you should know that. But your feedback and input, we will certainly take that into account. And like I said, we appreciate everybody coming out. But I will tell you this, this committee voted for the height of the building, and it's my understanding it's 3-story, provided that it's next to a 2-story. It's 2-story, provided it's next to a 1-story. They took that into account. I think they voted 9-6 to allow that to happen. And then the design guidelines that they just voted on were voted on, again, by 2 different neighborhood associations and the business interest unanimously. And then the last thing I would say is that what we've heard from Tesca thus far, and I don't know if Clyde is here, but that parking is really not an issue because they actually had people stand there all day long and literally count the cars and the spots that were available. But, there may be some areas that are more busy than others, and totally open to taking a look at that and trying to figure out something that's, out of the box in the way of parking. But I'm taking your time. Go ahead,
Oh,
Frank.
that's okay. Thank you. I just wondered how it got started, and you answered my question there. And so the city isn't backing it basically right now, does it not?
We are backing the process. We
Yeah.
set up a process in place, and we're going to follow that process. I think that's only right,
Okay.
to follow that process. So the input that we have, you've got representatives that represent you on that committee.
Yes, I sure
Those
do.
representatives are your voice, and they need to represent you on that committee.
Okay, all right. I asked how did the city get into it, but I guess you've answered my question there. When is the city council itself? Do you vote on it to
Yes, we will.
the council itself?
Yes.
And
yes.
you've already done that?
No,
Okay.
the recommendations will be forthcoming, and we will vote on those.
Okay. I misunderstood because it sounded like you had already made a decision.
No. What we voted on was setting up the process, putting the moratorium in place, establishing the committee, and then the mayor, before me, Mayor Gare, appointed the different committee members, making sure to have representation from the different interests in Valley Junction.
Okay, and I'll jump back to the Thursday night sessions and all the people that go there and have a nice time. I mean, and that's that Thursday night one. And parking, of course, I got that down, and you're saying you got it taken care of?
I'm not saying we have it taken care of. We hired a consultant. The consultant is very good at what they do. We actually had the consultant as well as staff basically stand down there all day long and count cars and to determine whether or not there was a parking issue. And what they've reported back to the committee is that there really isn't a parking issue that they see. There may be a parking issue during certain events that go on down there. There's always been an issue with that, farmers markets and whatnot. But what they reported back to the committee, my understanding, and Renee and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there really wasn't a parking issue that they saw. And, you know, there were some blocks that were more congested than others, but they reported that there really wasn't an issue with parking.
Well, I was down there today, and it was pretty full. It's busy. Very much so. And I don't know how the shops would fare in there, and where's the parking for the people that are not getting on the street? They got to go over to 6th Street and 4th Street to park.
There's on-street parking as well as parking lots on 6th, a couple different parking lots on 6th. And
I guess, yeah, obviously you can tell me that I am opposed to taking anything out of there. But I go clear back to the railroad coming in.
I hear you.
In 1939 it came in, and in 1938 it became West Des Moines instead of Valley Junction. And excuse me for my, I think we should take that 2-block area that we got and save it. I feel that way because I see that's happening in other places. And Thursday nights, Friday nights, special occasions, stuff like that. I don't see where it's going to be, how it's going to park, and how it's going to be parked. I think we ought to look at the Catholic Church and some of our things that are, in fact, history. And I'm disappointed. Penn-Dixie and the other cement plant, built West Des Moines.
Yep. I hear you, Frank. I hate to cut you off, but your 5 minutes is up.
Okay.
You could probably have another minute.
Well,
You were speaking for.
Well,
I gave you an extra 3 for that. If you could just,
south of the.
yeah, if you could just wrap up your thoughts, Frank. I don't want to abruptly cut you off.
Okay.
Wrap them up real quick.
The
I'd
other thing
appreciate it.
is, south of the tracks. Why can't something be done south of the tracks?
We are taking a look at that, and the area over there is developing as well.
Now, there's been no word about that at all.
We just met with an entrepreneur that's taking a look at doing something down there. I believe retail or maybe a distillery on one level and some apartments. And we pushed them over in that direction, said you ought to consider that.
And the thing is, the Mexicans and the blacks built West Des Moines, to be as far as I'm concerned. And we're taking that away from them. We had to take them away from across the tracks because of the flooding back in the 70s. And the last thing is, if you paid attention to the Val-Air ballrooms coming in there.
Yep.
So people are going to be coming there. They're going to be coming there in full force if
Sure.
it's like it was back.
We hope so.
I hope so too.
Well, thank you,
right.
Councilman. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Right. Thank you very much.
Anybody else for Citizens Forum?
Hi, I'm Sarah Kellenbeck. I live at 602 Fifth Street, and it is 20 years this year that we bought the house at the corner of Fifth and Vine. Thought about it for a long time before we moved in, but it was a planned thing. I've been in Des Moines, this is double anniversary this year. I've been in Des Moines 50 years this year. And I lived with family, and we would come down on Saturdays, go to the antique shops. It was a lot different 50 years ago, because there would be men kind of pouring out of the bars on a Saturday when you're going to your shopping thing, and they were feeling really pretty good when they came out on the street. So it was, to say it was entertaining, yes, it was very entertaining. Love living down here. Like I said, it was something we thought about for a long time before we committed to it. Our kids were gone, and we decided it was our time. It's a walkable neighborhood. But the thing that we need to remember is there are a lot of people that come to Valley Junction from other parts of Polk County, other parts of Iowa. And if you drive through there a lot, like we do, because it's on the way home, there are a lot of out-of-state cars, too. So we do attract people. You can argue that cars are going away, or you can argue that maybe that's just a wishful thinking on the parts of some people. Cars have gone away a long time ago in cities, and that's perfectly understandable. It's expensive in cities to have a car. You have to pay a lot of money for parking places. Iowa's a little different. I would be really surprised to see Iowans give up their automobiles. One of the things that makes me passionate about this area is the fact that there's so many different personalities in the shops in the Junction, and there's so many different things offered in the shops in the Junction. I have a relative. She and her mother own a building and run a business out of it in the 100 block. I go there at least once a month, and to say they're passionate about the Junction that's an understatement, because they've had their business down here for over 30 years. They also feel sometimes like their opinions are not asked for or valued. Anyone can feel that way on any given date. It just happens. But I think the committee that was put together was a great idea. But in some ways, I wish there was also a way for us to go out and poll not only shop owners, but the people who own their buildings and have shops. Anybody can come in and rent a building. Our rent down there has always been reasonable. I hope it remains that way, because it allows people who have not had businesses before to try that dream that they've always had of having their own business. There are so many different things involved. There's no simple answer for any of it. But I just hope we explore every side of the question when we ask it, and explore all the different types of people that can answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Anybody else for Citizens Forum?
Nick Woggy, 136 3rd. Howdy, y'all.
Hey, Nick.
I was at the January 26th meeting of the Valley Junction Steering Committee. Mr. Mayor, you made a very passionate, off-the-cuff speech that almost had me. Until on the video, 3 hours, 19 minutes, 43 seconds, you said, and I quote, "We don't run this city by petition." And Mr. Mayor, I found that offensive at the time. And I almost got you stopped to ask you what you meant by that. And I'm standing before you now as a form of petition to try to change something. Many people here tonight, all here to petition the council. Myriad of reasons to petition the council. Petitioning is how the council gets things done. It's how change happens, wrongs are corrected. This was said in front of a city-sponsored committee, 4 city employees and a large group of residents. You pretty much punched the residents in the stomach when you said that. Country was founded on a petition. 1776, the greatest petition in the world, was written and sent to King George. The Constitution has been upheld. The Founding Fathers thought the power of petition so strong, so important, it was written into the Constitution. It's been upheld by the Supreme Court. Matt, can you verify that? Your statement at the meeting told the residents your voice doesn't matter. And it tells your employees, go ahead and do it. Russ, if I may, that was uncalled for. You just went a little too far, and it was an unfortunate set of words in an otherwise pretty darn good speech. And I think you owe the residents of West Des Moines, not me, not the residents of Valley Junction, all the residents of West Des Moines, an apology for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Call me tomorrow.
I will do that. Anybody else for Citizens Forum? Okay, seeing none, I would just respond to Nick's comment. A lot of times we have people that want to come in, we've got a process in place, they don't like what's going on, and they want to come here and skirt the process and get a bunch of petitions signed and have something changed because of the petition. A lot of people are here tonight. I think almost everybody that's here tonight is here due to a call to action. Okay, there was no call to action except for to a limited group of people that are here tonight. And we appreciate you being here tonight. We appreciate the feedback, the input that you're giving us. It's very valuable. We're all taking that in. But we established a process. We established a committee. We wanted to make sure that committee was representative of the community down there. And we believe that that is representative of the community down there. Now, just because you don't like the way things are going, doesn't mean that we're not going to follow that process. We set a process in place, and that's what we're going to follow. It also doesn't mean that your voices aren't being heard. They are being heard. But, you know, we're not going to sit here and, you know, this person's turned in 20 petitions and this person's turned in 25, therefore we're going with the 25. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear your voice. We want to listen to the feedback and input that we get from you guys, but we've established a process and we're going to follow that. That's all I meant by that comment, okay? Mr. Hahn, if you'd like to come up, then we're going to close the Citizens Forum.
Yeah, Jack Hahn, 212 7th Street, resident of West Des Moines for 69 years, okay? I understand what you're saying, but I don't know how we go about letting the city council know that we have some issues without being able to at least get a petition. Now, that's not saying that you're going to change your mind because of, okay, but somehow we got to be able to have communication. I mean, our country was founded on
and we want that communication. You know. And the petition is valuable to see, people that signed, but as was pointed out that night, that petition had individuals that signed that didn't live in West Des Moines, right, fictitious individuals. It was an electronic petition. I mean, there were all kinds of issues. The other thing I would point out, you know, Mr. Hahn, is that we also had another petition, if you will, of 300 to 400 people that filled out surveys of what they want Valley Junction to look like. And right, my comments went to that as well. We're not going to go, okay, it's 300 to, you know, 260. Therefore, the 300 win.
Right. I'm just saying.
That's what I was.
I'm just saying. But, how do we know, or how do we get our information out to you guys if, you know, you can't do it that way? You know, we're not a dictatorship. I know that.
Right. Right. You can do it that way. We're just not going to count the number of names
Right,
on a
exactly.
petition.
But-
And if there's one more name on the one petition than the other,
And I'm not saying that.
You
You
know.
know, just being able to get that word out, hey, we're not happy with that process or whatever. And as far as your committee went, I realize that was the last mayor that set that up. But I talked to you, I talked to Councilman Hardman about, we had somebody on there from the Planning and Zoning Committee, which, you know, and then turns right around and he votes on this thing again. Wrong. Lady over here is on there. I thought you said it was residents and business people down there, but we brought people in from the outside. Don't have to answer it. You know my feeling. I talked to you already. Okay, thank you.
Russ, one
appreciate
thing
it.
I want
Thank
to
you.
point out, you talked about the signatures on the petition not being from West Des Moines. That survey that was done by Tesca, it asked specifically, are you a resident of Valley Junction? Are you a business owner of Valley Junction? Are you a property owner? Or are you a visitor for Valley Junction? So people that filled out that survey, the 400 that you quoted, how many of them were not from Valley Junction or from West Des Moines, period? And so to say that the signatures on a petition don't count because they're not residents, I struggle with that.
I'm not saying they don't count, Kevin. What I'm saying is that we're not going to look at two different petitions, one with 400, the other with 399, and then go, well, the 400 wins. It's valuable feedback and input that we're getting. Sure, people have a right to petition the government, absolutely. We appreciate everybody being here. We appreciate you guys showing up to the committee meetings. I understand there was a call to action tonight for people to be here. You know, there wasn't a call to action for other folks, okay? So all I'm saying is that we're not going to count the number of names on a petition and the number of signatures, and that's how we're going to make decisions. We're going to take that as part of the decision-making process and weigh that out and then make the decision. But we set up a process, and now we're going down that road, and now we're having people say, well, you know, we see the process, but we don't believe in the process, okay? And I'm saying there are going to be recommendations that come forward. There are people that are represented from two different neighborhood associations as well as business interest and some others on that committee. It's a pretty good representation of people down there, and they voted for the design guidelines on a unanimous vote. So, I mean, that's pretty powerful. And those people that are on that committee represent hundreds, if not thousands of people that live in the Valley Junction area. And those voices matter. And if you guys have concerns, you need to be talking to those people that you align with on that committee, and they need to be representing you on that committee. And you're welcome to show up and voice your opinion, your concerns. And many of you have done that for the last couple meetings. And that's appreciated. We want to hear from you. So, anybody else for public forum before I close it? I appreciate the discussion here tonight.
Russ, can I make one study? Come up here on the council, you want me to come forward?
Yeah,
Come
come
on up,
forward so
Frank.
you can get on record.
It won't be long. When we were on the council, we had a push like we're doing right now. And it was from First Street to Fifth Street. And people were being pushed out if they wanted to go out and sell their properties, okay. If they don't, they do not have to. Now that was a city council by the book, all 5 of us at that time. And is that nil and void because it was done back in the 70s?
No, everybody that owns their building has a right to sell their property or not. I mean, if they don't want to sell their property, Victoria doesn't want to sell some of her property. She doesn't have to. That's up to the business owner who owns that property whether or not they want to sell. But if I buy that property or somebody else buys that property, the design guidelines that were voted on, I think at the last meeting unanimously, those design guidelines are what are going to dictate what can be done with that building. And if they don't follow those design guidelines, they cannot rehab it, they cannot develop that building. They will have plans that will be rejected.
Couldn't those votes be pulled up somewhere and see what they say
The votes for the committee?
from the committee that we put on? Or did you guys,
Oh, when you were on the council?
yes?
We could take a look and see if we still have that
Could you?
somewhere.
I'd like to see how it says,
Okay.
and then we can go from there.
Okay.
From my standpoint.
Ryan, if we could
Yeah.
search the archives and see if we could find that. But you're
I
specifically
was on from
looking,
1970 to 1980, so
okay,
2 terms.
okay.
And then I ran.
Well, we'll see what we can find, Councilman. Appreciate it. All right.
Sorry to be-
I'm going to close Citizens Forum. We're going to move on to item 3, Mayor, Council, Manager Reports, Other Entity Update. And we will start down at the end here with Councilman Lotz. Any report?
Nothing to report, Your Honor.
Okay. Councilman Trevilian.
The only thing I have to say, and I'm looking up the date to make sure it's right, is that I didn't have it on, sorry. All right, February 19th, from 10:30 to noon is going to be my town hall city council meeting down at the Activity Center, 217 5th Street. So anybody that's here or online wants to come down to it, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
One more time, Kevin.
February 19, 10:30 to noon at the Valley Junction Activity Center, the American Legion Building, 217 5th. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Hardman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and want to thank people for being here tonight, and appreciate the opportunity to hear their thoughts. I will say that I have been at almost every one of these meetings, and I really appreciate what people have brought to the meetings. I know there's been a lot of discussions on all sides. I appreciate the leadership of the meetings. I think we have Mo and Mr. Hahn as well. So it takes a lot. And, you know, I walked away from the last meeting feeling like, gosh, I thought we made progress. I almost had to fall over the chair when it was unanimous that these design guidelines were voted on by every single person that voted there. So I kind of listened tonight and feel like while there was a vote unanimously on all the design guidelines, I don't know where we go from here, because I thought we had good progress. I even talked to a number of folks that left and felt like for the first time ever in one meeting, there was some sense of consensus about trying to move forward. So anyway, I have been on those meetings, sitting in those meetings. I'm a non-voting member, but I've spent probably close to 30, 40 hours when reading and going to meetings and talking to different folks, because I too care about the junction. Contrary to what my folks think, I care and I want to listen, but I also know there's compromise that will ultimately be at, that no one is going to get everything that they want. I don't care what we do. I don't care what the vote is. No one is going to get everything that they want. So I attended as chair the public safety meeting. Appreciate having Councilman Hudson attend as well. Interest of time, there was a discussion at the meeting that really dealt with the notion of vicious dogs and what happens when a dog has been deemed vicious and they are at furry friends. There is an ordinance that says they're always going to be at furry friends, and that's where they're going to wind up staying. Furry friends, as you know, we do partner with furry friends. I love furry friends. I love pets. I love dogs. I love animals. It came to be that they weren't quite involved, as they said, when the notion of the ordinance was that there's no other option after a dog has been determined vicious. They have a dog there that has lost both eyes and no sight, and has been there for a couple of years and they feel is rehabilitated. And there is a foster parent that wants to take over this dog. And so, but the ordinance does not allow for the dog to leave furry friends to go to a foster home to prevent. So we ended up, after lots of discussions, asking that the police and furry friends get together and talk about, is there any type of small conditional way that would allow a dog that has been rehabilitated? And that's really kind of where the rubber meets the road is, who determines rehabilitation? Because we do want people to be safe, and the last thing we want is a dog to get out and re-injure someone. But life is never black and white. There's always gray in the middle. And so here it is, Furry Friends, who loves and takes care of animals, this dog has lost total sight, and even I think an eye removed and everything, and is really pretty docile, and someone wants to get him out, Furry Friends, and take care of him. So more on that later, as we strike the balance of public safety and strike a balance of, does the dog stay there for the rest of their lives? And it costs to take care of that kind of dog. So that's what the big discussion was. I'm not asking for tons of comments on that. More is going to come to this council beforehand.
Such a tough issue, and I appreciate you and Councilman Hudson looking at that and trying to figure something out. So, Councilman McKinney, any report?
Yep. Hey, thank you, Mayor. Several folks have left. I just want to make a couple comments relative to the conversation, and just start by saying this is a really valuable, experience in terms of feedback, hearing what everybody's perspective is. I was very apprehensive initially back in, I'll say, March of last year. I could be off on my dates by a little bit in terms of the moratorium. Because when somebody owns a property and you tell that somebody that they cannot, shall not, will not do anything with respect to that building for an undetermined period of time, you're interfering with that person's property rights. And so it really created frustration for me to do something like a moratorium. But I think that frustration was outweighed by the fact that when we had a series of projects put before us on the council, we had nothing we could look to and say, you have to build to this standard. You have to ensure that this building looks, feels, leaves the impression of something that's historic in nature. And so it's as a result of that inability to say and treat everybody fairly when they came before the council, say we have to be fair to all of the residents, those that own the properties in the area, those that live in the area, those that have an interest in rehabilitating their properties, to ensure that everybody knows the standards are going to be held to. Whether it's as strict and as detail-oriented as other areas across this country where you've got national historic standards and you have historic preservation commissions and you require people to get a certificate of appropriateness for, changing a gutter that's hidden behind a bush, or whether it's something that's that Tesca's come up with or something else. And I can tell you, but for the work that's happened thus far, and it's not complete, but for the work that's happened thus far, we would not have a single standard. And whether it's steel or brick or something else, there's not a legal mechanism for this council to say no. And I'm really looking forward to understanding what it is that these guidelines say I've gone through it and I understand, but we're going to have to take those guidelines as they are presented in the 96-page packet and the other packet that I've reviewed, and they're going to be boiled down into an ordinance. And that ordinance is ultimately what folks are going to have to comply with. And so I am excited to see where this ends up, because we will finally have something we can point to for purposes of understanding the standards by which everybody's going to operate in that particular area. We have it for other parts of the city, and I'm glad we're going to have it in this part. So I sorry, I just had to share some
I
feedback.
appreciate your comments.
So we had development planning this morning. Councilwoman Hardman and I had development planning. We talked about several different items. I just want to highlight the fact that a first of its kind horizontal apartment complex, and I shouldn't say apartment complex, apartment concept was presented. Nothing like this exists in the Midwest. They are, I think, coming in with a concept that was originally seen in Arizona. It's a local developer that's doing it. Roughly, well, in Ward 2 there, off of Mills and 88th. So it sounds like a really unique project. We've seen a lot of folks that have single-family homes that they're renting, and we've had people come to our council meetings expressing frustration with single-family rentals, because when it's a single-family rental, perhaps the person that's renting doesn't keep up the yard, doesn't remove the trash from the driveway, or leaves the toys out in the street. This is a concept where there will be common ownership. There will be kind of a uniform nature throughout the whole development. We also had public services last week, and there's been an ongoing issue for economic development throughout our community, and those are the connection fees. And we've got some areas in this city that have some of the highest connection fees across the metro per acre, over $10,000 per acre. And so Public Services met last week to talk about how we can try to bring those more in line with some of the areas, and I know there's a study going on there, so I was glad to hear that we're moving forward. And last, I'll say, I appreciate the opportunity to attend both the Greater Des Moines Partnership Annual Dinner and the Bravo Des Moines Gala this last weekend. I thought several of my colleagues here were there, and it's great to have the city of West Des Moines represented at these regional events. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll try to keep this quick, but F&A committee has been meeting the last couple of weeks, and we had 13 applicants for hotel tax funds, and so we are Councilman Loetz and I have been sifting through those. We actually sent an email out to ask for a little more specific information. But in any case, it's really exciting that so many groups want to bring more events to West Des Moines and or help the residents of West Des Moines. So it's great to get to see those applications. Number two, the other thing we talked about besides the budget amendment, which we're looking at later tonight, was we're going to get started on the process for evaluating City Manager Haddon. So we'll be talking about that in the weeks and months to come. And finally, just one more thing to share, since we haven't had a council meeting since January 19th. But in my neighborhood, and I've been telling this to everybody I can talk to, and here we are at the City Council, and I simply must say it to everyone here, online if you're watching, because just 2 streets over from me, there was a fire on January 19th. And first off, everyone got out safely, and so of course that's incredible that everyone is safe. But I mean, it's my neighborhood, and so I heard so many stories from my neighbors, because when there's a fire at 11 p.m. and fire trucks are there till like 3 a.m. finishing everything, everybody's at their window just the entire time. And so I heard from so many of my neighbors, and the thing that I kept hearing again and again was just how impressive our firefighters were, our police were, our EMS, even Public Works lent a hand. I mean, and that January 19th, that was negative 20-degree wind chill. It was the coldest night of the year, and this was the night when there was a fire. And every single neighbor, I was 2 streets over, so I did not hear the commotion, but everyone 1 street over. They heard, they saw, they watched, and what they told me was the most efficient and focused and just awesome operation they've ever seen. So I have to give my tremendous thanks to all of our emergency service personnel who just absolutely did amazing work. So have to say that. So yeah, I will gladly clap at that. And the house, about 8 months for a rebuild, so of course that's a long time, but a lot of the house was saved, so that's really, really important. And of course, all of the people, no injuries at all, which is certainly the most important thing. So I wanted to give just a massive shout out there, and that'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Councilman. City Manager Tom Haddon and I got kudos also from the City of Clive for similar story, providing aid to a fire in Clive that happened at 1 a.m., I think on a weekend, and, below zero temperatures. So these men and women are just awesome. So, City Manager Haddon, any report?
Just real quick, along with that, when you call 911, you get Westcom. It's a joint effort. They have now been accredited. So every aspect of our public safety, the police, fire, EMS, and dispatch is now accredited, and which is very rare in the country to have all of them in one place that way. So that's kind of level of service is our goal for our citizens and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 4, consent agenda. Is there any item that any council person wishes to pull?
Yes, Mayor, there's two, and I just give me.
4E1 and 4K1?
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, 4E1 and 4K1. Any other items that any council person wishes to pull? Otherwise, I would take a motion on the remainder.
Move for the remainder.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 4E1, motion approving change order number 1 for the Digital Enterprise Last Mile Conduit Deployment Segment 1, Phase 1. Matt.
Yep, thank you. I guess, Dick or Jamie, this question for you. I've abstained from all these matters related to the conduit. This is actually because of my representation of Google. My review of this is that this does not relate to the Google at all. This is a pure Mediacom conduit. Is that right?
I think it's for a design of Mediacom that will be a part of the bigger area that was previously designed, so yes.
Okay, so it's Mediacom related.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Move for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, any further discussion, I should say? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, 4K1, resolution ordering construction, Digital Enterprise Conduit Deployment Segment 3, Phase 3. Matt.
Yep, thank you. I think this one actually does involve the Google side of things, and for the prior reasons, I'll abstain from this item.
Okay.
Move
can
for
I get a
approval.
motion? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Four yes, one abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 5A, old business, Jordan Creek Tower, 575 and 595 South 60th Street. Adopt the Jordan Creek Tower Area Development Plan, amend comprehensive plan land use map to designate support commercial land use, and establish the Jordan Creek Tower specific plan ordinance regulating development of mixed-use building, Dennis R. Alba Revocable Trust. We have got an ordinance for approval of the second reading, waiver of the third reading, and adoption in final form. I would just note this came through Development and Planning on December 20th and P&Z on January 10th. Then it was also the comp plan amendment and area development plan came through the City Council, as well as the first reading of the plan, and all of these were passed with unanimous support.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019, according to Title IX zoning, Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development District pertaining to PUD district regulations and guidelines.
Move approval of the second reading.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, Matt.
Move to waive the final reading, move to waive the third reading, adopt in final form.
Second.
Second, okay, any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay. Item 6A, public hearings. This is the time and place for a public hearing to consider 2021-22 FY Operating Capital Budget, Amendment Number 2, initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date that the notice was published?
January 28th, 2022, in the Des Moines Register.
Okay, and have we received any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, now is the time for anybody in the audience who would like to address the council on item 6A. Please come to the podium and give us your name and address. Okay, seeing none. And Ryan, I don't believe we have anybody online that's joining us, do we, that can
I
comment?
think there were a couple phone numbers.
Okay, but do they have ability to comment if they wish?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody online that would like to address the council on item 6A, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and then give us your name and address. *6 instead of #6. Okay, hearing none, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got a resolution for approval of Budget Amendment Number 2, and I would just note that this came through the Finance Administration Committee, as Councilman Hudson alluded to, with unanimous approval on January 12th.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
5 yes.
Okay, item 7A, new business, Neff House Plata Survey Parcel 21-142 and Parcel 21-143, generally located off the intersection of Cascade Avenue and South 93rd Street. Approved Plata Survey to create a parcel for the transfer of ownership, Silo 9, Plat 1, LLC. We've got a resolution to approve and release the Plata Survey. There are no outstanding issues, and I would note this came through Development and Planning on December 20th with unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
5 yes.
Okay, item 7B, Plata Survey, Parcel 21-149, east side of South Grand Prairie Parkway, north of Boonville Road. Approved Plata Survey to create parcel for the transfer of ownership, WNG McKinney West Farm, LC. We've got a resolution to approve and release the Plata Survey. There are no outstanding issues, but there are 2 conditions of approval, one of which is that the approval of the plat is only for transfer of ownership. And number 2 is that no improvements are to be made until this is replatted through the city's subdivision process. So with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
Four yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 7C, Plata Survey, Parcel 21-150, east side of South Grand Prairie Parkway, north of Boonville Road. Approved Plata Survey to create parcel for the transfer of ownership, W&G McKinney West Farm, LC. Again, there's no outstanding issues, and there are 2 conditions of approval, as I previously stated. And with that, I would ask for a resolution to approve and release the Plata Survey.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Four yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 7D, resolution to approve the contract with the police or Teamsters Local 238. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move approval.
the resolution? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion at all? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 7E, amendment to City Code, amend Title 3, Business and Licensing, Chapter 8, Pawnbrokers, to add definitions of dealer and secondhand dealer and amending licensing procedures. We have an ordinance for the first reading. There are no outstanding issues, and this came through Public Safety on December 3rd with unanimous recommendation.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
5 yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title III Business and Licensing, Chapter 8 Pawnbrokers to add definitions of dealers and secondhand dealer, and amending licensing procedures.
Move approval, first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Please vote.
5 yes.
Item 8, receive, file, and/or refer. We do not have any items to receive, file, or refer. Item 9, other matters. I see Jamie coming up to make sure that this time I give her an opportunity to give us a legislative update.
It's not much of an update. Jamie Lettering, Deputy City Manager. This week is 1 week before the first funnel, so urgency to move along. Any bills through committee starts to increase, plus today is local caucuses from around the state, so we kind of lose a day, so this week becomes even more compressed. I guess the only bill sort of note for this evening, there are 3 tax proposals, the governor's, the Senate's, and the House. The Senate's tax proposal is the only bill that actually affects any local government income revenue. That's through local option sales tax. There have been a couple of discussions on amendments to that to maybe make that a bit more palatable for cities. It sounds like leadership is open and interested. The chairperson has indicated they would talk to some cities that had some reasonable amendments. So I think Metro Coalition and others, League of Cities, maybe working through the proper channels to propose something that would be a bit more maybe amenable to the rest of the cities. It's kind of it takes local option sales tax and does to that what school districts have done through their save dollars. So it's kind of a similar formula. I can answer any questions or follow up on any other bills that you might have questions about.
Any questions for Deputy City Manager?
Okay.
Jamie, thanks for the report. Is it too preliminary to see any sort of fiscal, prediction for the city?
Yeah.
Just based on even the Senate bill, it's just far too early?
Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
Only because if an amendment is offered, that could change, and some of the reports that are needed in order to estimate what fiscal impact it may have on cities have not been completed and turned in yet by the state or Secretary of State. So without some of that background data, we don't have all of the factors we need in order to really solve that equation. We know that tax reform is really important. That's high on everyone's list. So they got those bills out early. So just kind of see where things end up at the 11th hour, probably.
If I could maybe just add a little bit based upon some other conversations that I've had with some folks. I appreciate your comments, Jamie, about the local option sales tax piece. And in talking with folks, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate, my understanding is the intent of the language was to hold communities, cities harmless in terms of, ensure that they get the amounts that they currently receive in the same manner and the same mechanism, so to speak, as a formula under this new proposal as we currently receive. In addition to that, I think there have been other things to, contemplate, and that is there are businesses online primarily, but maybe some brick and mortar that don't collect the full 7 cents. Some collect only 6 cents. And through this proposal, the concept would be, because it'd be a state tax, that we would actually get that additional penny in the instances today where we don't, whether it's 2% of businesses or 5% of businesses or whatever it may be, I don't know. And then in addition to that, the bill would eliminate some exemptions for computer peripheral devices. I think mice or, printers and computer keyboards and mouses, all this stuff, right? And those would then be taxed at 7%. So I think in concept, it could potentially work out where on the local option sales tax side of things, there could be opportunities for greater revenue, just given the ability to actually capture the revenue we should have otherwise received. And I think my understanding is they're still working out whether or not that can actually happen, given the way that the language works in the code. But I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Anybody else?
Thank
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Any other council person have anything under other matters? Okay, if not, we will adjourn into our workshop, which will be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.